The letter Ozzy Osbourne left for Tony Iommi just hours before his final breath. The phone call came at 6:47 a.m. on July 22, 2025. Tony Iommi had been awake for hours, sitting in his home studio in Birmingham, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had received a text from Ozzy just the day before, a simple message saying he was tired and had no energy, but something about it had felt final in a way that chilled Tony to the bone. When Sharon's name appeared on his phone screen, Tony's heart sank before he even answered. Her voice was barely a whisper, broken by sobs that seemed to come from the deepest part of her soul. "He's gone, Tony. Ozzy's gone." The words hit him like a physical blow. Just 17 days earlier, they had shared the stage at Villa Park for what they all knew would be their final performance together. The Back to the Beginning concert had been a triumph, a celebration of over 50 years of friendship and musical partnership. But now, sitting alone in his studio surrounded by guitars and memories, Tony felt the crushing weight of a brotherhood that had just been severed forever. If you're already feeling the weight of this moment, please hit that like button. This is the story of a friendship that changed the world and a final message that will break your heart. The silence that followed Sharon's words seemed to stretch for eternity. Tony stared out the window at the grey Birmingham morning, the same city where two working-class kids had first dreamed of making music together over half a century ago. The irony wasn't lost on him that Ozzy had come home to die, just as they had come home for their final performance. "When?" was all Tony could manage to ask. "About an hour ago," Sharon replied, her voice barely holding together. "He was peaceful, Tony. No pain. He just slipped away." Tony's mind immediately flashed back to their last conversation, just hours after the Villa Park show. Ozzy had come to his dressing room in a wheelchair, looking exhausted but satisfied. "It went all right, didn't it?" he had asked with that familiar grin. "Yeah, it did," Tony had replied, not knowing those would be among the last words they'd ever exchange. Tony and Ozzy's relationship had never been simple. They had known each other since childhood, attending the same school in Birmingham where Tony was a year ahead of Ozzy. In those early days, Tony had been one of the kids who occasionally bullied the younger, smaller Ozzy, something that would create a complex dynamic between them for decades to come. "There was a period of time where we were arch enemies," Ozzy had admitted in a recent interview. "He used to intimidate the shit out of me. But that intimidation had eventually transformed into respect, then friendship, then something deeper, a musical brotherhood that would change the course of rock history. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. When they first started playing together in 1968, they were just four kids from Aston who had answered each other's ads in local music shops. Tony remembered the day Ozzy walked into their practice space with that distinctive voice and manic energy. Neither of them could have imagined what they were about to unleash upon the world. Tony's revolutionary guitar riffs, heavy and dark and unlike anything that had come before, combined with Ozzy's distinctive wail to create a sound that was both terrifying and beautiful. They were four working-class kids from Birmingham who accidentally invented heavy metal, creating music that would influence generations of musicians and define an entire genre. But their journey together had been far from smooth. Ozzy's struggles with addiction had led to his firing from Black Sabbath in 1979, creating a rift that took years to heal. Tony remembered that period vividly, the anger, the hurt, the feeling of betrayal on both sides. There had been legal battles over the band name, periods where they barely spoke, reunions that felt more like obligations than celebrations. "I think he really just held out to do that show," Tony would later tell reporters, reflecting on Ozzy's final performance. "I really feel, and me and Geezer were talking about it last night, that we think he held out to do it, and just after that, he's done it and said goodbye to the fans." Yet through it all, something had endured. In recent years, especially as Ozzy's health declined, their relationship had softened into something beautiful. "Since I've been laid up with this surgery I've had, he's been so supportive to me," Ozzy had said. "He texts me all the time. We text each other." The texts had become a lifeline between them. Tony would send messages asking how Ozzy was feeling, and Ozzy would respond with his trademark mix of humor and honesty. Even as the Parkinson's made typing difficult for him, he never stopped reaching out to his old friend. 3 hours after Sharon's call, she arrived at Tony's house with an envelope that bore his name in Ozzy's shaking handwriting. Her face was drawn with grief, But there was also something else, a sense of purpose, as if delivering this letter was one of the most important things she'd ever done. "He finished this yesterday morning," she said, her eyes red from crying. "It took him hours, Tony. His hands were shaking so badly, but he was determined. He said it was important that you read it after he was gone. He made me promise." Tony's hands trembled as he took the envelope. The weight of it surprised him. Several pages, written in the distinctive scrawl that had become increasingly unsteady as Parkinson's ravaged Ozzy's nervous system. On the front, beneath his name, Ozzy had written, "For Tony, my brother in the riff." The phrase brought tears to Tony's eyes immediately. It was so perfectly Ozzy, part joke, part profound truth. They had indeed been brothers in the riff, united by their shared understanding of how music could transcend everything else and create something magical. Alone in his studio, surrounded by the guitars that had created the soundtrack to their lives, Tony carefully opened the envelope. The first thing that struck him was how much effort this letter must have taken. The handwriting varied from page to page, sometimes steadier, sometimes barely legible, but every word was deliberate, every sentence crafted with the kind of emotional honesty that Ozzy had always struggled to express face to face. "My dear Tony, if you're reading this, then the old bastard has finally shuffled off this mortal coil, hasn't he? I can picture you sitting in that studio of yours, probably wondering how the hell you're supposed to go on without your irritating frontman making your life difficult. Well, I've got news for you, mate. You're going to be just fine. You always have been. I'm writing this on what I suspect might be one of my last good days. The Parkinson's is winning. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold this pen. But there are things I need to tell you before I go. Things I should have said years ago. But you know how I am with words when it really matters. We've known each other for almost 60 years, Tony. 60 fucking years. From those days at Birchfield Road School when you were the older kid who occasionally gave me grief, to yesterday when you sent me that text asking how I was feeling. That's a lifetime, isn't it? More than a lifetime for most people. Do you remember when we first started playing together? 1968. We were just kids with big dreams and no idea what we were doing. You had those riffs. Christ, Tony. You had riffs that sounded like they came from somewhere beyond this world. Dark and heavy and beautiful all at once. And somehow, my voice fit with your guitar in a way that neither of us expected. I still remember the first time we played Black Sabbath together. That riff you created. That doom-laden, earth-shaking sound that would define everything we did afterward. It was like nothing I'd ever heard. When I started singing over it, it felt like we were tapping into something ancient and powerful, something that had been waiting for us to find it. I need you to know something I've never said out loud. You made me who I am. Not the fame, not the success, not the madness. You. Your belief in what we were creating, your refusal to compromise your vision, your absolute dedication to the music. You showed me what it meant to be an artist. People always focused on me as the front man, the crazy one, the Prince of Darkness. But anyone who really understood the music knew that the real genius was you. Those riffs that defined heavy metal, Iron Man, Paranoid, War Pigs, Sweet Leaf, those were your creations. I was just the guy lucky enough to sing over them. And what a privilege that was, Tony, to be the voice that people heard when they listened to your incredible musical inventions, to be the one who got to interpret your dark symphonies and turn them into songs that would change people's lives. I never took that responsibility lightly, even when I was too fucked up to show it properly. I know I wasn't easy to work with. Christ, I was a nightmare half the time. The drinking, the drugs, the unpredictability. I put you through hell, didn't I? There were times when I know you must have wondered why you bothered with me at all. Times when firing me probably seemed like the only sane option. I remember that period in the late 70s when everything was falling apart. I was so wasted most of the time that I could barely function, let alone perform. You tried to help me, tried to get me to see what I was doing to myself and to the band. But I was too far gone to listen, too stubborn to admit that I needed help. When you guys finally fired me in 1979, I was devastated, angry, hurt, convinced that you were all betraying me. But looking back now, I understand that you didn't have a choice. I was destroying everything we'd built together. and you had to save the band from me. But you never gave up on me completely. Even when we were arch enemies, as I called it. Even when we weren't speaking. Even when lawyers were involved. There was always something between us that couldn't be broken. The music, yes, but more than that. Brotherhood. You want to know what I remember most about our early days? It's not the fame or the success or the chaos. It's those moments in the studio when we'd lock into something special. When your guitar would start playing one of those incredible riffs, and I'd find the melody that fit perfectly with it. And suddenly, we weren't just two guys from Birmingham anymore. We were creating something that had never existed before. That's what Black Sabbath was really about, wasn't it? Not the darkness or the horror imagery or the controversy. It was about two friends who found a way to make magic together. Your riffs and my voice, creating something that was bigger than either of us could be alone. I think about those early albums, Black Sabbath, Paranoid, Master of Reality, and I'm still amazed by what we accomplished. We were so young, so naive, but we had this instinctive understanding of how to create something powerful and lasting. Your guitar work on those records is still jaw-dropping, even after all these years. Iron Man. That riff you created is probably the most recognizable piece of music in heavy metal history. Every time I hear it, I'm transported back to the studio where you first played it for us. The way your eyes lit up when you knew you'd found something special. The way we all looked at each other and knew we were witnessing the birth of something legendary. I need to apologize for some things. For the years when I was too fucked up to be a proper partner. For the legal battles that should never have happened. For the times when my ego got in the way of our friendship. For not being the bandmate you deserved. Especially in those early solo years when I was so desperate to prove I could make it without Black Sabbath. But I also need to thank you for some things. For never letting me settle for less than my best. For pushing me to be better even when I resisted. For creating the musical foundation that made everything else possible. For being the constant in a band that saw so many changes over the years. You were the only one who was always there, Tony. Through every lineup change, every reunion, every breakup and makeup. Black Sabbath was always your band, really. The rest of us came and went, but you were the heart of it, the soul of it, the creative force that kept it alive. Even when I had my solo success, even when I was trying to distance myself from Sabbath, I knew that the best of what I was doing was still connected to what we'd created together. Randy Rhoads was brilliant, Zakk Wylde was incredible, but there was something unique about the musical chemistry we had that could never be replicated. That last show we did together at Villa Park was perfect, wasn't it? I know I was physically struggling, sitting on that throne instead of running around the stage like I used to. But being up there with you, Geezer, and Bill, playing those songs one more time, it felt like coming home. I could see in your eyes that you knew it was goodbye. Not just goodbye to performing, but goodbye to something bigger. The end of an era, the closing of a chapter that began when we were teenagers with nothing but dreams and determination. When we played Paranoid that night, the song that started it all, I looked over at you and saw not just my guitarist, but my oldest friend. The kid from Birmingham who had grown into one of the most influential musicians of all time. And I felt so proud, not of my own success, but of ours, of what we'd built together. Orsheim, you know what I realized during that last show? We did it, Tony. We actually fucking did it. Two working class kids from Birmingham changed the world. We created something that will outlive both of us. Something that has influenced countless musicians and brought joy to millions of people. But more than that, we proved that friendship can survive anything. Fame, addiction, legal battles, creative differences, decades of ups and downs. None of it could destroy what we built together. That's not just a professional achievement, that's a human one. I need you to know that these last few years, when our relationship finally became what it should have been all along, have meant everything to me. Your texts checking on me, your support during the darkest times, your willingness to work with me again on songs like those tracks we did for Patient Number 9, that all meant more to me than any award or accolade ever could. Working with you again on Degradation Rules and No Escape From Now reminded me why we'd been such a powerful team in the first place. Your guitar work on those songs was as brilliant as anything you'd ever done, and hearing your riffs again gave me a strength I didn't know I still had. You've always been the strong one, Tony, the steady one. the one who kept the ship sailing when the rest of us were lost at sea. When you were diagnosed with lymphoma, I watched you fight that battle with the same determination you brought to everything else. You never complained, never gave up, just kept moving forward with grace and dignity. Now I need you to be strong one more time. I need you to carry on the legacy we built together. Keep making music. Keep playing those riffs that sound like thunder and lightning captured in steel strings. Keep showing the world what heavy metal really means. Don't let them forget that it all started with 4 friends from Birmingham who dared to be different. Don't let them sanitize our story or turn it into some neat little package. We were messy and complicated and human, and that's what made the music real. And when people ask you about me, about our friendship, about Black Sabbath, tell them the truth. Tell them it wasn't always easy, but it was always real. Tell them that the music came from a place of genuine love and respect, even when we were too stubborn or too proud to admit it. Tell them that Ozzy Osbourne's greatest achievement wasn't biting the head off a bat or shocking audiences, or even his solo career. It was being part of something bigger than himself. It was being your friend and musical partner for over 50 years. I'm not afraid of dying, Tony. I've lived more than one lifetime, experienced things most people can only dream of. I've been married to the most incredible woman in the world, raised children I'm proud of, made music that will outlive me. But if I have any regrets, it's that I didn't tell you often enough how much you mean to me. You're not just my guitarist, Tony. You're not just my bandmate or my business partner. You're my brother, not by blood, but by choice, by shared dreams and shared struggles and shared triumphs that bonded us together in ways that family sometimes can't. I love you, you difficult, brilliant, stubborn bastard. I love your perfectionism, your dedication, your refusal to compromise your artistic vision. I love the way you can make a guitar sound like it's crying or laughing or screaming with joy. I love that you never gave up on the music, even when the rest of us were distracted by other things. Most of all, I love that you were willing to share this incredible journey with me. From teenagers with big dreams to old men with incredible memories, we've walked this path together. And what a path it's been. So here's what I need you to do now. I need you to grieve, but not for too long. I need you to remember the good times more than the sad ones. I need you to keep playing that guitar like your life depends on it, because the world needs your music now more than ever. And when you're up there on stage or in the studio creating something new, I need you to know that I'll be there with you. In every riff, in every note, in every moment when the music takes over and nothing else matters, that's where I'll be, Tony. In the music we created together. Take care of yourself, my friend. Take care of Geezer and Bill and the rest of the Sabbath family. Take care of the legacy we built. And remember that somewhere, somehow, I'm still listening, still proud to call myself your friend. Thank you for everything, Tony. Thank you for the music, the memories, the brotherhood. Thank you for making an ordinary kid from Birmingham feel like he could conquer the world. Thank you for 57 years of the most incredible friendship anyone could ask for. Rock on, you beautiful bastard. Rock on until the very end. All my love and respect, Ozzy. P.S. Don't let them turn us into some sanitized rock and roll fairy tale. We were messy and complicated and human. That's what made the music real. Tell them the truth about us. The fights and the reconciliations, the failures and the triumphs. Tell them we were just 2 friends who found something magical and held onto it for dear life. P.P.S. That riff you played on Iron Man, the one that sounds like machinery coming to life, that might be the greatest thing anyone has ever created on a guitar. I've told you that before, but I needed to put it in writing. You're a fucking genius, Tony Iommi, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. P.P.P.S. Keep working on that solo album you've been talking about. The world needs to hear what Tony Iommi sounds like when he's not carrying the rest of us along. I have a feeling it's going to be extraordinary. P.P.P.P.S. And Tony, thank you for never giving up on us. Even when I was at my worst, even when it seemed impossible, you always believed we could find our way back to the music. That faith you had in what we created together is what kept it alive all these years. By the time Tony finished reading, tears were streaming down his face. The letter fell from his hands as over 50 years of memories washed over him. Every recording session, every tour, every fight and reconciliation, every moment of musical magic they had shared together. He could hear Ozzy's voice in every word, could feel his presence in every carefully crafted sentence. This wasn't just a goodbye, it was a love letter to their friendship, a celebration of their brotherhood, a final acknowledgement of the bond that had created some of the most important music in rock history. Tony sat in his studio for hours, holding the letter, remembering. The scared teenager who had answered Ozzy's ad in the music shop, the young men who had accidentally invented heavy metal, the middle-aged rockers who had survived fame and addiction and legal battles, the older friends who had finally learned to appreciate what they had together. He thought about all the times they could have given up on each other, all the moments when their friendship had hung by a thread, the drugs, the ego battles, the years of silence, the legal disputes over the band name. Lesser friendships would have been destroyed by any one of those challenges, but somehow they had survived it all. The phone rang, interrupting his reverie. It was a journalist already calling for a quote about Ozzy's death. Tony ignored it. There would be time for public statements later, time for interviews and tributes and official responses. Right now, he needed to sit with this letter, with these final words from his oldest friend. 2 days later, at Ozzy's funeral, Tony would deliver a eulogy that brought the entire congregation to tears. He would speak about friendship and music and the incredible journey they had shared. He would tell the world that there won't ever be another like him, and that Geezer, Bill, and myself have lost our brother. But the most important words had already been spoken, written in shaking handwriting on pages that Tony would treasure for the rest of his life. In that letter, Ozzy had revealed not just his love for Tony, but the depth of a friendship that had changed the world and created a legacy that would endure long after both men were gone. Tony carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Tomorrow he would call Geezer and Bill, would start the difficult process of mourning publicly while celebrating privately. There would be tribute concerts to organize, interviews to give, a legacy to protect and preserve. But tonight, he would sit in his studio and play. He would pick up his guitar and play the riffs that had started it all, the heavy, dark, beautiful sounds that had accidentally invented a genre and changed the course of music history. And in every note, he would hear Ozzy's voice, singing along just as he had for over 50 years. The Prince of Darkness was gone, but his final message to his oldest friend would live forever. In those pages, Ozzy Osbourne had revealed the truth about their relationship, that beneath all the madness and success and controversy, it had always been about two friends from Birmingham who found something magical and held onto it for dear life. The riffs would continue, the music would live on, and somewhere in every note, Ozzy's voice would still be there, singing along with his brother in the riff, just as he had promised. If this story of friendship and final goodbyes has moved you, please hit that like button and share it. The bond between Ozzy and Tony reminds us that some friendships transcend everything, even death. Their music will live forever, but their brotherhood is the real legacy.